Bulavinaka, and welcome again to another segment of The Lens at 177. And here with me as our guest on the show is the flamboyant and Mama Ramanaita, the Honorable Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, Lynda Tabuya. Bulavinaka, Madam, and thank you for being on the show today, despite your busy schedule and back-to-back meetings.
Bulavinaka Fiji, Bulavinaka, Namaste, and Faxia. Now, Maori.
Let's get on straight with it. Your first year in government, as part of government. How was your first year in government, and what are some of the highlights and challenges did you face?
Thank you. I want to pay tribute to my predecessors, the Honorable Mary Rakuita and Honorable Rosie Akbar, who had, despite the challenges that they faced themselves, were able to set some platforms that I was able to continue. The first one is the National Action Plan to Prevent Gender-Based Violence. They'd gone through developing the NAP, GBV as we call it, and when I came in, it was my job to take up the mantle and implement the 4-year National Action Plan to Prevent Gender-Based Violence. I thank the Government of Australia and other stakeholders as well that supported this very important National Action Plan to prevent violence before it starts. You know, often we are reactive as a society, at the reactive end of it, when the abuse has happened, and then we react. But this is really looking at preventing violence before it starts, looking at several key settings, which includes the traditional setting, looking at our own culture and traditions that may continue to perpetuate the discrimination against women and girls. Also the faith-based setting, so working with our church leaders, our community leaders as well. And also looking at the sports setting, which is a very influential setting. We're looking at working with our sports, our players as well as our administrators to see how sports can be an influential voice to prevent gender-based violence. But really it is about, when you talk about prevention, where it starts, it's challenging our norms, our behaviors. And behavioral change can only happen when you really go to the root cause of inequality, which is patriarchy. So that's one of the big plans that I've taken up as I've come in. Apart from that, really just building our capacity, which the establishment of our Department of Children. So the coalition government is committed to the establishment of the Department of Children, raising the visibility of children in Fiji. And so we have achieved that in the first year with budget allocation. And I thank the will and the commitment of the government to look at the well-being of our children. I thank UNICEF also for their partnership to do this as well. That's one other achievement. The other was to look at our social protection programs, which we need to review. And so the review was happening the last number of years before I came in. So when I came in, we had recommendations to fulfill. And one of those recommendations in the first year we were able to fulfill, and that was to convert our food vouchers that we gave to our recipients into cash. Studies around the world have shown that when you give cash to our people who need it, they will use it on their families and their needs. And so we were able to have that achieved in the budget last year. Very happy that that has happened, and I think this has been received very well by our welfare recipients.
That's awesome news. Thank you. Speaking of children, our next issue we want to talk about is children and our youths. Early this year you had mentioned that the ministry is considering plans to impose a national children's curfew. Can we have an update on this, please?
Yes, we still stand by that. It is yet to be the government's position. So, you know, the ministry is the human face of government. We deal with our most vulnerable daily. Our field officers continue to receive children, women, elderly, people with disabilities who face abuse. One of the initiatives that the ministry would like to see is to impose a children's curfew. It's not new. It's something that has been done around the world.
Yeah.
And the aim is to ensure that our children are in the care of their legal guardians or parents during certain hours when children really should not be out and about. And this is looking at hours between either 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. where children should really not be moving around. And so the imposition of a children's curfew is to protect our children. The progress of that, it's yet to come before cabinet. It is still something that the ministry is formulating as part of the bigger plan for a child well-being strategy. And child well-being strategy is not just about child protection, it's also about child welfare, it's about child well-being. So there are several angles that come into that. So this is something that the ministry is still working on. Again, we have the great support of UNICEF to be able to have evidence-based policies when it comes to this initiative. But I do want to thank the people of Sambeto, Nabanua Mbeto Raurau. They've actually started this initiative in their own tikina, where they have imposed a curfew on children in their villages. And that is, to me, that has come from the community. So it is something that the government needs to look at, because only in partnership together between government and our communities that we can really be able to protect our children. And I thank the Vanua Mbeto and Sambeto.
Thank you for that. Also, still on the issue of children, this morning monthly we get statistics from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions on the rape and sexual statistics every month indicating, and every month it indicates that children are still the victims of this rape and sexual acts. So why is this happening, and is the ministry doing enough with relevant stakeholders to address this issue? And what sort of legislative changes do we need?
Well, I'm a mother of 6 children, and raising children is not easy. But what I as a mother would like to see, that there is support from the government and the community to protect my child. It takes a village to raise a child, and I cannot do it alone. And so for government to be able to look at these statistics and say, we have a huge problem, and for the ministry to take this up as the Ministry for Children, we are committed to protecting our children. The statistics are alarming. It's actually a national shame. Our children continue to face the brunt of the ills of society. The statistics do not lie. Numbers don't lie. Our victims are getting younger. Our offenders are getting younger. And that is something that the ministry has to deal with. It is presented to us. Both children who are in conflict with the law and children who are at risk. Yes, it is upon government to take on this responsibility, but working in partnership with the community, our faith-based leaders, our talatalas, our traditional leaders, our turangani koros, maramani koros, turang maramani tikina, provincial level, Great Council of Chiefs. It's also the responsibility of our community leaders in our informal and squatter settlements as well, where most of this crime is being committed statistically. So what does government need to do about it? We really need to do and develop a national action plan to prevent violence against children. Again, just like our national action plan to prevent gender-based violence, we need to look at what are the root causes that are causing our children to face violence, and how do we prevent it before it starts. And so the ministry is in the process of formulating our national action plan to prevent violence against children. It's been done worldwide, and it's really to go to the root causes, but also to come up with the behavioral change that is needed. Now, there is a direct connection between the violence that women face and the violence that children face. When a woman presents herself and she's faced abuse, 100% of the time the children are facing it as well. And so they have a link. So to develop this NAP-VAC, we call it, we're finding that the statistics are pretty much overlapping. And so we are committed as a government and as a ministry to develop this national action plan to prevent violence against children. Now, why are national action plans important? It's only from a national action plan where it is widely consulted, where we gather the evidence, the data, to have evidence-based policies where the government can then commit budget, where the government can have the political will when it is fully informed. And we hope to develop this national action plan within the year so that we can really target and look at what is causing the violence against our children. I mean, we can guess what it is, we know what it is, but in order to formulate policies, we do need to conduct the evidence and data for it.
You're watching The Lens at 177, and we will be right back after this.
We were around when the deed was first signed. We were around when the first car engine roared. We were around when the very first was crowned. Through devastations, jubilant celebrations, and the milestones. We will continue to be around to bring you all the stories first.
Recording in. You're watching The Lens at 177, and I'm speaking with the Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, Lynda Tabuya. Madam, on the issue of street dwellers, what's happening to your ministry's plans to remove beggars off the streets?
Street beggars, of course, is something that we see every day. And it is always concerning for anyone that visits our towns and cities to see street beggars on the street. I don't really like calling them street beggars. They are street dwellers because not all of them beg, but they are facing all sorts of issues, from poverty to rejection to psychosocial issues. Right. We have profiled our street dwellers in last year, and we found at any time, like for example, Suva City, there can be between 20 and 30 street dwellers at any time. And of course, there's Nasinu as well, there's Lautoka, there's Nandi. The initiatives that the ministry is taking to start off with is quite limited. Our welfare officers do not have the legal authority to remove street dwellers off the street. We do not have the power. It is actually for police officers to do, because they have the power to remove anyone from public spaces. Now, unless they are committing a crime, the police cannot remove them off the streets because it's a public place. So really, how people view them is that they're a nuisance, but they should really not be a nuisance. How do we actually take steps to find out what is really going on with them? When we profile our street dwellers, most of them have psychosocial issues. Most of them need counseling and mental health interventions, which of course comes under the Ministry of Health. So say in one day we may pick up our street dwellers, we take them to the health centers or St. Giles Hospital, as well as our homes, where they can be cleaned up and washed up, as well as given the care they need. But what we find is that they return to the streets. They prefer to be on the streets. Now, in terms of the need for mental health intervention, that comes under the Ministry of Health. So we continue to collaborate to see ways where that services can be provided, counseling services. We are in talks with our churches in terms of providing a safe space where we can have our street dwellers come for a meal, for example, or come to sit down and we mingle with them. And so this initiative is something we're working on. How do we find a safe space where they come for a meal, but at the same time, they can be groomed as well, and they can be then, spoken, we speak to them, and build that relationship of trust. Because the moment they see welfare officers come to the street to talk to them or approach them with a police officer, they run away. And this applies to children as well. Yes. They run away. And so this is something that we need to strengthen. We need to continue to work with the Ministry of Health as well as the Fiji Police Force. Now, should our welfare officers be given the powers to remove people off the street at will? It's something to be discussed and to be consulted on. We certainly are not the ministry to have policing powers and removing people from the public. That is their right as members of the public to be in public spaces. But we certainly are looking at ways to strengthen the provision of psychosocial services. I want to thank the organizations who work with our street dwellers. I want to thank Aruka Fiji with the great work they are doing to actually spend the time with our people who are on the streets and in public places. And then from there they can refer them either to the ministry or refer them to the Ministry of Health, as well as organizations like Empower Pacific or Fiji Women's Crisis Center if they're women, if they need that support and counseling. One of the issues that came up in the last number of years since COVID was when COVID hit and businesses shut down, including the tourism industry. We saw an influx of people that came to the informal and squatter settlements. So there are family members that came to their families that lived there. So we had an overcrowding of our informal and squatter settlements. You'd see 2, 3, 4 families in a family. Of course, the government provided direct support in terms of giving out payment to help them, but there was overcrowding in these homes. When we profiled some of our street dwellers, especially the men, they would say to us, well, there's no space back home, so we prefer for our wives and children to be in the home so that we are not a burden and we've come to live on the street. So it's a poverty issue as well. It's something that we need to look at as a government, and we are committed to building affordable housing for our people, especially our poor and our most vulnerable. So that is something that the Ministry of Housing with the Ministry of Finance is working on in terms of the affordable housing scheme to take this across the nation. And we're committed to thousands of homes to build for our people. And this is something to tackle poverty, which is a pervasive issue across all ministries. It's not just the responsibility of our ministry, it's the responsibility of government, and we are committed as a government to look at this as well.
The Hibiscus Festival, after 5 years, we had organized it again this year, and what a comeback. You, as a former title holder, you had a few events you had attended to after the festival, and had some of the Hibiscus contestants accompany you to the events. Why was this? Is this a way of trying to manage their mental stability, after a chaotic week, or probably a campaign strategy for the next election?
Women's leadership is something I hold very close to my heart. And one of the biggest challenges I face as a woman in leadership is the lack of support of women supporting women. In fact, when you look across the social media platforms and in any platform, it's usually women tearing down women. And it's a very sad state of things. And as a woman leader, I feel it not only my duty, but also it's from my heart to support women in leadership. These are young women who have been raised up on a pedestal. They now have a following. They are actually women leaders now since the Hibiscus platform, and for all other platforms as well. I also had Miss Nasinu with me. And this is an opportunity for someone like me who has the national platform to be able to bring in these young women leaders to be able to raise their visibility as well. And I am all for women leadership. I'm all for women supporting women. Yes, I've been accused of that. That is, is it a campaign strategy? If any of these young women want to come into national leadership, if they want to run for local government elections, I highly support it. And what better way to be able to mentor and to be able to perhaps show them how it can be done but by having them right there beside me. Right. I could do workshops all day. We could do workshops on women leadership all day, but to have them there present and to see how they themselves can put themselves out there to the public, outside of the hibiscus or the pageant comfort, is for them, I believe, an achievement as well. So I highly support it, and I look forward to supporting more women in pageants. As a former Hibiscus queen myself, I wish I'd had the same opportunity when I became Miss Hibiscus. It was a very lonely journey, and I wished I'd had those opportunities, but it was not forthcoming for me. So I wanted to ensure that I would change that I would be able to give opportunities to these young women to raise their own voices and their own platforms, and I encourage them to keep doing so.
Thank you. Postpartum depression. What is the extent of this condition among women in Fiji, and what is the degree of work carried out by the ministry in this area?
Again, as a mother, I have born children, and I know firsthand the experience of postpartum depression. It is very real. Our women go through it. And the more children you have, of course, the more experiences you have. It doesn't get easier. But this is something that is very real, and it certainly is something that needs to be addressed in terms of the mental health of our women. The health of our women is vital to our economy. It is vital to society. It is vital to the family, because a healthy woman is a productive woman. A healthy woman is an empowered woman. And if she's ill, whether it's physically or mentally, she will not be effective in carrying out her role. She will not be effective to be happy and then go on to make her family happy as well. So this is something the ministry is looking at in terms of the whole scope of the prevention of violence against women in the National Action Plan. The health of a woman is central to this plan. So postpartum depression. In terms of the global statistics, about 10 to 20% of our women face this that have born children, which is about a quarter or 1/5 of our population. Fiji ourselves, we don't have the data on it. We do need to collect this data, and it needs to be done. But our Fiji country gender assessment sort of alludes to that we can model on what WHO has put out. So that's about the right indication. How does the ministry plan to deal with this? Yes, like I said, it's part of our National Action Plan to prevent gender-based violence, but also looking at the sexual and reproductive health and rights of our women, SRHR. We work in conjunction with our Ministry of Health as the line ministry that looks after the health of our women. So it is a great collaboration. We have great doctors and a great minister who sees it as a very important issue. What we need in Fiji, we need more services for counseling. We need more psychologists. We need more women psychologists who focus on women's health. This is something that we lack in Fiji. And I want to thank our organizations who are service providers like Empower Pacific, Medical Services Pacific, the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, the Fiji Women's Rights Movement, who collect this data as well, and to be able to focus on postpartum depression. We continue to collaborate and work on this.
Thank you. You're watching The Lens at 177, and we will be right back after this.
We were around when the deed was first signed. We were around when the first car engine roared. We were around when the very first was crowned. Through devastations, jubilant celebrations, and the milestones. We will continue to be around to bring you all the stories first.
You're watching The Lens at 177, and I'm speaking with the Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, the Honourable Lynda Tabuya. Madam, the online safety, social media use is a big concern here in Fiji, especially you could attest to that. So as the ministry that looks after children and women, you'll notice that young women and even young men are subjected to cyberbullying almost on a daily basis. Even children are subject to social abuse. What does the ministry make out of, and how can it address this situation?
The National Action Plan to Prevent Gender-Based Violence, a component of it is addressing technology-facilitated gender-based violence, or TFGBV. and that means any violence that is perpetuated on an online platform using technology. The ministry is very committed. We are working with our stakeholders, and I thank the UNFPA for coming on board to help us in terms of addressing technology-facilitated gender-based violence. The cyberbullying is happening on a daily basis at alarming rates. The social media is really the last frontier of media where it is largely unregulated.
Yes.
And I believe this needs to change. As a woman subjected to technology-facilitated gender-based violence and cyberbullying, I know firsthand the effects of online violence and cyberbullying. It affects a woman's mental health. It affects the way she can carry out her work and her duties. It affects her very existence. And so as a ministry, we are committed to combating this form of violence. We work with the Cybercrime Unit at the Fiji Police Force, as well as the Online Safety Commission, when complaints come in order to address cyberbullying. Not many women and children are coming forth to complain. Why? Because the very nature of it, the very nature of this crime is that online bullying or cyberbullying has occurred, and it is out there in the public before a person can actually step forward to register a formal complaint. So even to step forward and address this, there is a level of stigma and shame that is involved with it, especially with children where their parents are having to deal with this. You know, the child has already gone through the trauma of this shaming on social media, this cyberbullying on social media. And then to come forward and register the complaint again, for the child to actually go through that trauma again is really taxing on a family. So what is actually happening with it is that there is an increasing level of extortion happening, which is a crime as well. So parents are receiving threats from perpetrators to demand money, or they will release these visuals. And so to that effect, parents are being involved in it as well, and it's affecting the whole well-being of a family, where they feel obliged to pay the money so that their child is not shamed. And this needs to stop. Putting up visuals or sharing visuals or any images of a person without their consent. Now, whether the image is actually of that person or appears to be that person, it can either be doctored or using AI, is a crime. And in Fiji, a person has actually been jailed for 2 years for doing that. So there's precedent there. Now, we encourage our women, we encourage those facing cyberbullying, please step forward and have that courage to register this complaint, because it has to stop. And that will be the deterrence. Now, as far as for the issue of the apps that are out there, like Telegram, it is a very concerning trend that young people under the age of 18 are willingly putting up their images on Telegram and sharing it. Now, a person under 18 does not have the ability to consent. So it is a crime for them to share that. So if you share that as well, you are committing a crime. So now we have established the task force to address pornography in Fiji from the government level. And so part of the task force work is to look at apps like this, because we have the ability to ban Telegram. We have the ability to ban pornography from children under a certain age. We have the ability to shut off Facebook pages or to shut down Facebook pages. Now, what our laws need and our Online Safety Commission needs is more teeth. They need to have more laws to be strengthened so that they're able to issue notices for people to take down their pages. And I thank the editor of Fiji Times, Fred Wesley, who highlighted this week in his editorial and gave the support that we do need to make more laws and to strengthen it so that we can deter this crime.
Thank you. On the remuneration issue, the Renumeration Act amendment caused a lot of public debate earlier this year, and some say the decision was made for politicians to fill up their own pockets. You were the chair of the Renumeration Committee at the time. What are your thoughts on the strong reaction from the public?
Well, the strong reaction from the public is well accepted. It is very well noted. There are valid concerns about it, because we as parliamentarians and as leaders, we are paid by you, the taxpayers. So I do wish to acknowledge all the concerns that were raised. A pay rise by politicians and MPs at any time, whether it was just what happened or years ago, will always be a cause of concern. And I acknowledge that. As the chair of the Emoluments Committee, it was my duty, it was my role to present that report to Parliament, because it was a Parliament Remunerations Committee. It has happened, it has been passed, but it is upon us, parliamentarians, it is upon us ministers to deliver to our people. For what has happened, we need to deliver.
Yeah.
We need to step up. And what does that mean? Whatever policies and whatever programs that we have, we need to be able to respond on time. We need to be efficient, and we need to be effective when our people need to access us. We also need to be very clear in our communications about what we have available for our people, and when our people need it. It's the response that our parliamentarians and our ministers need to step up on, but as well as the political will to fight for the budget, to fight for the finances needed from government to be able to implement these policies to help our people. And that takes the will of a minister, that takes the will of a parliamentarian, whether you're sitting on the opposition or in government. And so we need to step up. One of the initiatives I have taken, and this is part of our role as a minister or parliamentarian, is that we receive numerous requests from the community, whether it's to sponsor a volleyball tournament, which takes thousands of dollars, whether it's to buy kitchen items, whether it's to build an extension for a hall, whether it's to contribute to the community. This comes out of our pocket. It's not part of our ministry initiative. This is outside of the ministry and outside of government funding. And this we fund as well. For example, the community of Newtown reached out to me to help them with their Irish crossing, which had been totally damaged in the floods earlier this year. In fact, a grandmother lost her grandchild, a 4-year-old grandchild who was washed away during the flooding as they attempted to cross.
Yeah.
And so, using my own funds, I funded that initiative to the tune of about $7,000. And this comes out of our pocket. And so it is upon us ministers to use our funds as well to help the community, to be able to sponsor these very important initiatives that will help with the well-being of our people. And you know, that crossing may be a small crossing, but it actually sees our children crossing to go to school daily from Newtown to Valilevo. It sees our elderly being able to cross as well. So it's about accessibility for our most vulnerable and safety as well during flooding. And so it is upon us ministers and parliamentarians to take that initiative, to see that our funds that we have received and taxpayers' money that we have received is for the community, and that we have to have a heart of service to do so.
Thank you. So, still on that issue, the decision also resulted in other events such as the Fiji First deregistration, right? And now Parliament has 26 independents on other side of the House, rather on the other side of the House. As a former opposition whip and a lawyer by profession, also current cabinet minister, what is your opinion on having independents in Parliament where votes can go either way? Do you think this benefits the government in the long run?
Having independent MPs in Parliament in any democracy, I believe, is healthy for a democracy. You know, independent voices represent a wide section of society. You know, New Zealand Parliament has a good representation of parties in Parliament because of their voting system, which allows for that kind of representation. In Fiji, we've had dominant parties that are represented in Parliament, so they usually block vote. But the introduction of independence in Parliament has actually made government be more on our toes, so to speak, because we have different voices representing different sections of society to keep us accountable. And I believe it's healthy for us. Now, as far as voting is concerned, then it's up to government to do our lobbying. We have to step up and lobby for support from opposition in order to achieve the votes. Yes, we have majority in government, but barely.
Yeah.
But to have bipartisanship in Parliament shows a greater representation of the voice of our people.
Right.
And so it's upon government to lobby our opposition independently, and it's become easier as well because then they can have their own opinions and own votes as well, to lobby each individual member to support government initiatives. But it goes the other way as well. If they have a private bill, if they have a proposition or proposal that they want to bring to us, we welcome it. And it may very well become a government initiative. So the doors are open for opposition members to engage with us individually and not have to necessarily toe the party line. If that's something they don't feel. The ability to be able to move on their conscience is greater for our opposition MPs, and I think they're very blessed. I didn't have that opportunity, and of course conscience voting in Parliament is disallowed by the Constitution as a party, but as independent MPs they have that ability, so they have greater freedoms. And this is something that we should celebrate as a democracy.
On the markets, one of the biggest challenges for rural women is selling their products like handicraft items. This has been an ongoing issue. What has the ministry done to assist these women even exporting their products?
So one of our initiatives that has been happening over the years is our Women's Expo.
Yes.
So our Women's Expo, we have a National Women's Expo, but we also have our 4 divisional expos. And it is the ability for women to come and showcase their wares, and then they are selected based on the quality of their product. And so on that basis, we are able to select women who participate in these divisional expos as well as the National Expo. And that's a huge opportunity. We have hundreds of women that come for the National Expo, and they literally sell millions of dollars of their wares when they come. And that is something to be celebrated, to bring that together. But in terms of access to markets, it's always an ongoing concern for women and for small businesses, entrepreneurs in general. Access to markets and access to finance. So how do we as the ministry help? Since I've come into government, I am now developing our National Action Plan for Women Economic Empowerment. So it is, again, a huge consultative process, all of government, all of society approach, to put this plan together on how we can empower our women economically. I'll tell you something, as we look at schemes like the Labor Mobility Scheme and other opportunities where our men in majority are leaving to go overseas for these opportunities, our women are being left behind. And so our women are now having to look for an income or a second income to support their children or their families, their extended families, while their husbands are away for these schemes. And so very soon, I believe in the next 2 or 3 years, we are going to see women become the backbone of this economy. So we need to put our women to work. And that is upon us as government to come up with these initiatives to be able to help our women to work. And that will also include how do we help women with childcare when they're at work. We need to look at possibly introducing flexi hours for women. So while their children are at school, they are undertaking work. We need to extend the concept of working from home for our women, which came up during COVID. We need to look at that as well, that they can work from home. And you know what? Working from home for women, they have found to be more productive than when they are at work, because they're able to take care of their younger children as well. And this is clearly so in the garment industry, where the quality as well as the output of our women tailors and seamstresses who are working from home compared to those that come to the garment factory are much higher. So this is something that our garment industry are looking and seeing this as well. But we're also looking at the ability to provide childcare facilities at the workplace. And so we encourage our employers. We have the guidelines in place. The Department for Children will become the regulatory authority for any employer that wishes to open a childcare in their workplace. You have the ability to do so. And we invite you, please do this. Provide this space. You will find a happier woman will be a productive woman when she knows that her children are being taken care of.
Finally, the People's Alliance Party, which you are part of, had its assembly recently, last month, and the Honourable Prime Minister had mentioned the challenges of working in a coalition. Have you faced similar challenges?
Any coalition in any government in the world faces challenges. New Zealand has faced it, Israel continues to face it, it's all around the world. So Fiji is no exception. For me, being the first experience being in a coalition, it does have its challenges as well. It's like a three-headed animal. You know, one wants to go this way, one wants to go that way at certain times. And we saw that in terms of the emoluments vote and other issues as well. Yeah. But having said that, you know, there is nothing, I believe, that cannot be tackled with dialogue and communication. The more you communicate and the more you dialogue will bring consensus. And it is upon the leader, and I know this is upon the Prime Minister, I do not envy his position, having to manage a coalition. And I fully support him in his continued efforts to keep us together. I face similar challenges as well, of course, but I find to tackle this that I dialogue directly with my brother ministers and sister ministers. I dialogue directly with the parties in order to get them on board for what I'm lobbying, and they do the same as well. Mm-hmm. You know, open communication, being forthcoming, and being able to bring a consensus so that you can bring your policy to cabinet and have it passed by cabinet. That is upon a minister, that is upon a leader to do that. And so doing things through formal communication or doing things behind doors, thinking you will be able to achieve this, no. We need to have that open communication and dialogue all the time, and it includes on a party level as well. We've got to continue the cordial relationships between the three parties, and we were lucky we were able to have this from the time we were in opposition with NFP. Yeah. We've built that relationship, as well as SODALPA, and so we continue this camaraderie. Yeah. And I believe the more we dialogue and the more we reach consensus, it will always be the best for our people. The Prime Minister had also called on PAP leaders to start to look for party leadership successes for the party for the 2026 elections. Would you consider taking up another leadership role within the party? I always have this saying, there's only one boss. There's only one leader, and that's the Prime Minister. It is his prerogative to choose deputy party leaders. He has indicated that he would like to stand again in 2026. Mm-hmm. And I want to publicly state my support for him to run in 2026. Now, the party, of course, the processes in the party allows for leadership challenges. So if someone else in our party puts up the challenge to the Prime Minister, that is their right, and that is provided for in the Constitution.
And that is all we have for The Lens at 177. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and www.fijitimes.com.au.